It's so wonderful to be back here again in all this magnificence. Santa Barbara, the Vedanta temple here is unique. Just the elements here are so powerful. The sky above, sometimes clouded like now, sometimes startlingly blue, merging straight out there into the azure blue of the Pacific Ocean. The wind and the earth here, and fire, that too. So all the elements are very strong here, and such places are very powerful for spiritual practice and for spiritual enlightenment. It is easier here. It's easier to settle down into that presence here. I think many, many people notice it. Today we are going to talk about ultimate things. It doesn't get any higher than this, it doesn't get any deeper than this, maybe a little difficult also. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk for about 15 minutes or so. We'll break and then come back here for question answers. Those who have got questions, we'll do a little bit of a Q&A. What I'm going to talk about is the highest goal, the final realization, the ultimate point of it all. All in the self in all. Swami Vivekananda, in his Song of the Sannyasin, that's something that we should all read. When people used to ask me, when I became a monk, people used to ask me, what are you doing? What's the point of it all? What do you hope to achieve? What's it all about? I would just send them Swami Vivekananda's Song of the Sannyasin. I didn't have to write and explain all things. I cannot say it any better than that. What is the goal? What is the ideal? What is the practice? And the final result of it all. And in that Song of the Sannyasin, all these stanzas, the final stanza and the final lines are, the I has all become and all is I and bliss. Know thou art that, sannyasi bold. Sannyasi means monk. So, know thou art that, sannyasi bold. Say Om Tat Sat Om. So he concludes the Song of the Sannyasi with these words. The I has all become and the all is I. It's an ancient thought. Today I'm basing my talk on one verse from my favorite book, the Ashtavakra Gita, which is a sort of final statement of Advaita Vedanta, of non-dualism. And there the verse goes, Sarva bhutasthamaatmanam Sarva bhutani chatmani Vijñāya nirahankara Nirmamastvam sukhi bhava. Beautiful verse, beautiful, simple, direct Sanskrit. What does it mean? The self in all beings and all beings in the self. Realizing this, free from I and mine. Be thou happy. That's the meaning of the verse. But it's an ancient expression. The all beings in the self in all beings. You go back all the way to the Upanishads. In the Isha Upanishad, Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanyeva anupashyati sarva bhutastham chatmanam tato na vijugupsate. In the Isha Upanishad it says, one who sees all beings in the self, in the I, in the self, and the self in all beings, such an enlightened one cannot hate. Bhagavad Gita, same language. Sarva bhutastham chatmanam sarva bhutani chatmani ikshate yoga yuktatma sarvatra samadarshana. The one perfected in yoga sees everywhere the sameness, a same reality shining everywhere, inside and outside. What does this enlightened one see? All beings in the self and the self in all beings. Same language. And why just Vedanta? I wasn't looking for it, but just yesterday I was browsing through Meister Eckhart, the great German theologian, saint, mystic, who's very non-dualistic, who's very Advaitic, I think. there, and it just happened. I opened a big volume, and just randomly, I was just browsing through it and opened it. He is commenting on a line from Romans in the New Testament, and there the line is that for all things are from God and through God and to God. And another translation, in God. And he's explaining, what does this mean? From God, through God, in God, or to God? What does it mean? And Meister Eckhart writes, all that it means is, God is in all things and all things are in God. This is what we're going to talk about. As I said, it doesn't get any deeper than this, more profound than this. What are we going to see? We'll try to understand this. What does the self here mean? What does God here mean? And how is everything in God, and how is, or God that self? And how is the self in everything? How do we have this oneness? Swami Vivekananda said, the entirety of Vedantic teaching can be put in these two phrases: the divinity of the self and the oneness of all existence. So the divinity of the self within everybody. Self means the real self with a capital S, not the ego. The real self within everybody, that's the divinity within us. And all beings in the self, that is the oneness of all existence. Not just living beings, not just human beings, not just animals and plants. All beings, every entity that exists. How is it one? See, it is counterintuitive. It is, when we try to understand it, it's just the opposite of the way we experience things, isn't it? I do not think I am in anybody else. I am just here. And everybody else is different from me. That's what we feel. Where am I? I am located up to the extent of this skin. As the Upanishad says, Anakagrat, up to the tip of my nails. That's where I exist. And beyond that, I don't think I'm there. And all beings are in me. No, I'm not that overweight. I am this tiny little creature in one corner of a big room, and there are many, many others. They are not in me. I am not in them. We are separate beings. That's how we experience the world. That's how we go through life. And the teaching of Vedanta is, this is wrong. You are deeply mistaken. And that is the source of all our trouble. This is the life of ignorance. And when we realize the truth, what is the truth? All beings in the self in all beings. When we see that, when we learn that, understand that, and finally realize it as a living fact, just as the way right now, we feel it's a fact, I am just this much and not anything else. When we realize that I am all, and the all is in me, that is enlightenment. That is freedom. Freedom from suffering, freedom from sorrow. That is basically the highest realization that the spiritual, not only Vedanta, the spiritual traditions of the world have expressed in different language. But today we'll try to actually understand that and see how we can realize it. So, as I said, it doesn't get any deeper. And how deep it gets is this. What does it mean that that self is in everything? The self, as we know in Advaita Vedanta, non-dual Vedanta, the real nature of the self is existence, consciousness, bliss, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Let's just take existence. Being with a capital B. Existence with a capital E. Existence. What do I mean by existence or being? It's something like this. If you look at gold ornaments, necklaces, bracelets, rings, does it make sense to say that necklace has some gold in it, that ring has a little less gold in it, and that bracelet has lots of gold in it? Or is it the other way? It is gold which has been given the form of a necklace and a name there. It's gold alone which has been given the form of a bracelet. It's not that the ornaments have gold in them. If you just think a little bit, it's gold which is coming up in the form of the ornament. Make it even more clear. Look out into the Pacific Ocean there. 10,000 waves racing towards the Santa Barbara shore. Do I say that this wave has less water, that wave has more water? Doesn't it make more sense to say that the waves are in water, not water in the waves? The waves are not entities which have some water filled into them. They don't exist apart from that water. Is this example clear? We may say a big wave has more water, a small wave has less water. But if you think logically, it is water which appears as waves. Before it was a wave, big or small, it was water. And after the wave subsides, it is water. During the time though it was a wave racing to the Santa Barbara shore, it is water. Through and through. You touch the wave on the top. You surf on top of it. You're surfing on water. You get dunked in it. You're dunked in water. Wave is a form, is an activity, is a name. But the substance, the reality, it's water through and through. What's my point? If this example is beginning to make sense, let me give another example, more sophisticated than this. Our dreams. In our dreams, we meet people, go to places, eat things, we are happy, unhappy. And when we wake up, we see that none of it was there. I was just dreaming. And if somebody says, but all the people you saw, all those places you went to in your dream, they were nothing but mind. The dreamer's mind. Would that make sense? Yes. My mind imagined it, dreamt it. In my mind, they were actually not physical people, or there was not coffee and cookies. I was not going to the beach. No, there was no beach there. It was mind. There was no coffee and cookies there. It was mind. My friends were not there. It was mind. The mind alone appeared in those forms. Every bit of it was mind. Does that example make sense? Now, the self in all beings, what do I mean? What it means is existence. Think about all the things. Notice, there are people here, and they're sitting on chairs, and there's a carpet, and there is this temple, and sky, and earth, and ocean. All of them exist. Man exists, woman exists, is. Man is, woman is, chair is, carpet is, space is, wind is, ocean is. And when I say this, track it in experience. Feel that, yes, it is. This body is. Now, just like the water in the waves, just like the gold in the ornaments, just like the mind which appears as objects in dream, just like that, think of isness. Instead of water, think of isness, existence. Appearing as, just like water comes in various forms as waves, isness, existence, appearing as the chair and the carpet and people, space and air and fire and water. The existence of things. We never think about that. We are busy with things. We are busy with people. We are busy with events. But pervading all of that, it is the primordially, it is existence first. Not as a substance, we'll see. It's not a thing out there. That is not true. But existence first, isness. Instead of saying table is, cloth is, let's say isness here appears as a table, isness is now appearing as a clock, and isness is appearing as a cloth. This question of existence, it's difficult. This is difficult, no doubt about it. It's the most difficult and the first question in all of philosophy. This Vedanta is the science, the philosophy, the metaphysics of existence. In Sanskrit, it is called Sat, being, from which the word Satyam has come, truth, from which the word Mahatma Gandhi Satyagraha, the struggle based on truth, it has come. So, Sat, being. It is the first of all questions, before everything else. First existence, and then other questions. Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad says, Brahma Vidya Sarva Vidya Pratishtham. This science of existence, the philosophy of existence, the metaphysics of existence is the fundamental of all systems of knowledge. It is prior to all knowledge and all sciences, all philosophy, art and science. Prior is existence, being itself. Swami Vivekananda at one place says, it is that existence first, that existence with a capital E, and then we give it a color and we call it good or bad. But first of all is that being. I think to appreciate what we are talking about, the best commentary on this is actually by what I've come across. is by a philosopher in the 20th century, Martin Heidegger, the German philosopher. Now, many people, we don't read too much about him, know too much about him. He was one of the most profound, incisive thinkers of the 20th century. Only thing is, and this is a good commentary on human nature, being a very clever philosopher does not necessarily make you a very good person. So, he was a Nazi. And why he was a Nazi? Not out of conviction. When Hitler rose to power, he just wanted to, retain a position and be academically powerful and be this big professor. So he became a Nazi. And there's no end to, that's why he's sort of shunned these days. The story doesn't end there. Hannah Arendt, who was one of the most noted thinkers of the 20th century. She was Jewish. She coined the term the banality of evil in Eichmann's trial. She was his student and close to him. And she was arrested for being a Jew. And this professor, her teacher, and with all these connections to Nazi bigwigs, he didn't lift a finger to help her. So one must also see that understanding something, making philosophical, scientific, artistic breakthroughs, or producing works of art and philosophy does not always make a person very great. They often say, don't meet your heroes, you'll be disappointed. Anyway, so having said that has to be said. Now, the point I want to make is, he was the first Western philosopher in the modern times, in today's world, in 20th century, to consider once again the great question of existence. And he says existence is the greatest of all questions, is the first of all questions. Very Upanishadic language, it's the first of all questions. He says it is the widest question, it is the deepest question, and it's the most fundamental question. How is it, that's why I love this analysis, how is it the widest question, deepest question, and most fundamental question? What is the question? What is existence? That's the question. The question about existence. Why is there anything at all? Could be nothing. Why is there anything at all? So, why is there something instead of something else? That's a different question. But why is there anything at all? Why is there existence at all? What is existence? That's the question. Why is it the widest question? Because it includes everything. See, some questions are not wide. If you're going to talk about life, so everything that is living is of interest to you. But fundamental particles in physics or theorems of mathematics may not be of interest to you. Those are outside the width of your question, the domain of your question. But if you're questioning existence, then everything is within your question. Think about it. What is the only thing that can be beyond the question of existence? Non-existence. But non-existence is non-existent, doesn't exist. Therefore, there is nothing beyond the limits of this question. Everything is included in this question. What is existence? Widest question. You can't get any wider than this, any more inclusive than this. Deepest question. What do you mean by a deep question? So a deep question is, for example, a doctor might examine us for illness and COVID and all, and deeper than the doctor's examination would be, a biologist's understanding of COVID and human life. Deeper than that would be someone in chemistry or biochemistry who understands it at the chemical level, at the molecular level. Deeper than that would be a physicist's understanding. Deeper means in the sense of deeper, in the sense of more basic. So a physicist's understanding. And deeper than that, I'm sure a mathematician would claim the honors that we go to the very structure of the universe. So deepest. And the question of existence is the deepest of all questions. Ultimately, living, non-living, chemical particles, mathematical theorems, the abstract, we might even say an idea in the mind of God, whatever you call it, it exists. So existence is the deepest of all questions. And the third thing Heidegger said was, this question about existence is the most fundamental of all questions. Why fundamental? because it is a question about itself. It's a subtle point. When a physicist, for example, is interested in, say, the God particle or the bosons or something, that necessarily does not mean that he is interested, it includes himself. It's a question about a particle out there. A biologist studying COVID is interested in the COVID virus, not about himself particularly. It's not included in the scope of his study. But when you ask what is existence, follow this carefully. When you ask what is existence, the question what is existence is also an existent entity. It's included in existence because the question also exists. What is existence? So when you're asking what is existence, you are asking about something about the question itself. This is called self-reference. So the deepest questions are often self-referential, and it does not get any more self-referential than this. It's asking about everything. You're asking about everything at the deepest possible level, and you're asking about that asking itself, because it's also an existent thing, the question. So Heidegger says the question about existence is the deepest, is the widest, deepest, and most profound question that we can ever have in any field of human inquiry. And that's what Vedanta seeks to answer. When it says, Sarva Bhutastham Atmanam, the self in all entities, it talks about, consider the self as an unlimited existence. What we're talking about is an unlimited existence. Example, what is an unlimited existence? Again, consider the waves in the ocean. Now, I love this example. Suppose in the waves which are rushing towards the shore, there's this little wave which comes up. And it's very happy. It's playing with the other little waves, making friends, and there are other big waves around it. And things are going merrily along and then there are problems. Even little waves have problems. That wave is mean to me. And look, I'm bigger than that wave. And that wave is a loser, so small and skinny. Very little water in that one. And so there is jealousy, there is friendship, there is competition, there is meanness. And it looks up, some waves are towering. I can never be like that. There is envy. Problems of wave life, And then the biggest of all problems comes. It says, asks his friend, what is that in the distance? What's going on there? Oh, that's Santa Barbara. What happens? That's where all of us go to die. We hit Santa Barbara and we burst into millions of droplets of water and we die. Am I going to die too? That was the question of the Buddha. Am I going to die too? Yes, everybody dies, little wave. You're going to die too. You're going to hit. And that's the way it is. You're scared. Oh my God. It's all going to come to an end right now. That's the end of little wave. And then it sort of encounters like a stately wave passing it by, a Vedantic wave. And it says, there's a way out of this problem. All your problems can be solved. How? There is something called water. It doesn't die when a wave dies. It continues. There is something called water, which is the same in everybody. Big, small, it's just the same thing. There is something called water, which makes you the entire ocean. Everything is within you then, and you are within everything. And the little wave says, wow, what is water? I really love this idea. Where is water? What's water? He said, look deep inside you. And the little wave meditates deep inside. Oh, I get what is water. But not just deep inside you. Look on the surface. It's water. Look in between. It's water. And then it begins to realize I am water through and through. And when I hit the shore of Santa Barbara, I will burst into 1,000 drops of water. But I'm still water. It's just the wave form changes. Now there is spray form or foam or surf. But I'm still water. Not only that, even more remarkable, where is the boundary between me and the other waves? Where do I, the water, stop and where does the other wave begin? Where is self and the other? As I go to boundaries on both sides, in front of me, behind me, below me, everywhere it's water. As I expand, I find not only this wave, and that wave, including the mean ones. including the ones I was envious of and the ones I looked down upon. They are all the same. I am in all of them, and they are all in me. The self in all and all in the self. All in the self. I am beyond death. I was not born with the birth of the wave body. I, the water, am not affected by the actions of the wave body. I am not affected by the death of the wave body. I am exactly the same thing. I am in all beings. None are higher. None are lower. There's no question of hating anybody. How can I hate myself? I am that. There's no question of being envious of anything. There's no question of being, I wish I could do that. You are doing it in that form. You feel one. The little wave becomes the entire ocean. In fact, the ocean is less powerful than water. Imagine, what's more powerful? The wave or the ocean? The ocean is many times more powerful than the wave. And what's more powerful? The ocean or water? Water is more powerful than the ocean because the very existence of the ocean depends on water. If all the water were to evaporate tomorrow, I hope it won't happen, but if it were to evaporate tomorrow, water would be fine, the ocean would be gone. So, in the same way, existence, I, that pure being, that presence. I am here, and I have this form of a body, a mind, but I am there also, and in between also. Behind every existence, underlying everything that exists, I, the existence, am that one which gives it existence. It gives it being. Sarva bhutastham cha atmanam. That one existence in every entity. What's an entity? It's like an ornament made of gold, an ornament made of existence. All entities in this universe are your ornaments. Boy, are you bedecked with jewelry. I am that one vastness. In yourself, it's completely empty. But with all these names and forms and activities, you are full. You fill everything in this universe as being itself. And you have name and form and activity, and you called Sarvapriyananda, Mr. So-and-so, Miss So-and-so, and Swami So-and-so, and so on. And tables, and chairs. Swami Ashokanand, if somebody asked a question, well, that's all fine, but if it's, I am in this, and the same existence, like a being, a shining being is that table, why doesn't that table, move around and talk and say, hi, I am the same existence? And the Swami said, if your existence acting as this world, it would be a very poor actor if the table were to behave like a human being. The table has to behave like a table. That's good acting. The one existence in all beings. Just like the water in the wave. That existence is immortal. Bodies are mortal. They are born and they age and they die. But existence is not mortal. As that one existence, that's what Vedanta means when it says, Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman, I am pure being. Further, Sarva bhutastham chatmanam, sarva bhutani chatmani. All beings in the self. So this was the self in all beings. Existence you see in and through everything in the world. Try to make this practice. It works very well here in Santa Barbara. Sit out there, look out into the ocean and the sky and the temple behind you and the mountains, the hills behind you, and feel the existence, the presence everywhere. What presence? Just existence. We all feel it all the time. We don't notice it. We say, oh, beautiful sky. But notice, sky is. Magnificent ocean. Ocean is. What steady and powerful and strong hills. Hill is. Focus, settle down on the isness. You can feel it right now. An ocean of existence. Now look at it from the other way around. All of this is nothing but consciousness, awareness. Consciousness, here consciousness and existence are the same thing. I will not go into that. The dialectics of that are very deep. I will not go into that, but just you can appreciate it as a shining presence. One vast, unlimited, shining presence. I'm translating Sat Chit Anantam. I'm translating from the Taittiriya Upanishad, the definition of Brahman. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. What is Brahman? Brahman is this infinite existence consciousness. Consciousness, call it a shining existence. So I am and I shine. How do you shine? You shine as awareness, as knowingness. You know, the existence knows first mind, which is also existence. Existence appearing as mind. Then it knows through the mind the senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. Then through the senses and the mind, it experiences the body and the world outside. It knows, it acts, it enjoys, it suffers. It is always that one shining existence consciousness. But let's look at it now from the perspective of consciousness as awareness. We are looking at it till now as Sat, being. Now we are going to look at it as consciousness, awareness. All things are nothing but awareness. I'm going to perform this magic trick. Right now, before our very eyes, I'm going to make the entire universe disappear into awareness. I can do it in 7 stages. And by the way, I claim no originality in any of this. It's all taken from ancient or modern sources. So what I'm going to do now, the 7 stages, is just an offhand remark made by the present Shankaracharya of the Shankara Matha in Puri, in India, in the eastern coast of India. So the present Shankaracharya who's there, so there are, the original Shankaracharya, he put 4 of his disciples in 4 corners of India in ancient monasteries. The one on the east coast, on the coast of the Bay of Bengal, in the holy city of Puri, there is the monastery still continues in unbroken lineage for the last 1400 years. So the present holder of the throne, the post of Shankaracharya there, in one of his talks in Hindi, is just a sentence, not even a full sentence. In one sentence, he shows from this universe to consciousness only, in 7 stages. But I'll have to explain a little. What are those 7 stages? Follow this carefully. It's amazing, actually. It's like a guided tour of the entirety of Indian thought, Indian philosophy, stage by stage. So 7 stages. Start with the world. The world as we know it, as we experience it. This is called Jagat, stage 1, the world. Fine. People, things, living, non-living, life, world as we know it. Now he says, Jagat, world, he calls it the 2nd stage, Panchabhuta Vilasa, the play of 5 elements. Space and air and fire and water and earth. And that's the ancient cosmology. That's how the ancients in many civilizations, not only India, in many civilizations, they looked at the universe in that way. The play of 5 elements. You can translate it into modern terms, in modern physics. You're going to say it's the play of subatomic particles, matter and energy in time and space. You can do that. Basically, everything that we have in this physical universe is the actions and interactions of particles, of energy. And the stage is space-time. You can put it in those terms too. But that's what he means. In ancient terminology, it's the play of 5 elements. Panchabhuta means the 5 elements. Our bodies are made of that. Every element we see here is made of that. Even the space we walk through is also made of that. All of these are made of matter, energy, and space-time. Up to this, I think, in principle, a modern materialist also would not have any objection. Everything is built up of these things. Then the 3rd stage, Jagat, world, as we see it. 2nd stage, Panchabhuta, the play of 5 elements. 3rd stage. Here it gets a little tricky. The Shankaracharya says, all these 5 elements are nothing but Maya. It's Maya. Now, how does he say that? On what grounds? Of course, I think the Venerable Shankaracharya will immediately refer to the Upanishads to quote from the scriptures. That will not cut any ice with modern audiences. But is it so strange? Because if by investigating the world you end up with the 5 elements or with matter and energy, investigate matter and energy. What is matter? Oh, stupid joke. I can never resist it whenever this comes up. Any philosophy class, the first joke you hear in first day in philosophy class will be, what is matter? Never mind. What is mind? No matter. Anyway, that's having put that out of the way. If we investigate matter, I was reading this article by Galen Strawson, who is a professor of philosophy at UT Austin. He wrote this half humorous and half serious article in the, I think, New York Times. He wrote, "The hard problem of matter." We keep talking about the hard problem of consciousness, but that's just because we have made up our minds that consciousness is produced by the brain. And then we can't figure out how can a physical thing like the brain have first-person experiences. And then we call it the hard problem of consciousness. But then you have already assumed that the brain is producing consciousness, and then you can't explain it, and then you call it a problem. But what about matter itself? As we investigate matter, it seems to be disappearing before our very eyes. I mean, figuratively speaking. You've gone down from atoms and molecules to subatomic particles, from subatomic particles to quarks. They are also subatomic particles. But further down now, string theory. And it seems to be disappearing before our very eyes. What is matter? We don't know. It's being reduced to paradoxes. I remember reading Rebecca Goldstein's book on Gödel, the great mathematician, logician. Maybe the greatest mathematician of the 20th century, some say. In the introduction, she says, just look at the greatest discoveries of science in the 20th century. Einstein's theory of relativity, Heisenberg and his uncertainty, and Gödel and his incompleteness, the theorem of incompleteness. Now, I'm not going into the science or the mathematics of it. It's far beyond. I'm not competent. But what struck me was the language of these discoveries, the terminology, relativity, incompleteness, inconsistency, or uncertainty, incompleteness, and relativity. These are the terms used to describe Maya. As you go deep in any investigation, it seems that you're ending up not by completing that field. That was the dream in the 19th century. That the different fields of investigation in science will be completed in the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. But we find they are not complete. We are ending up with puzzles, paradoxes. Joke. I heard this from Slavoj Žižek. Those of you who have heard the name, you know who I'm talking about. Those of you... New York, I met him in New York a couple of times at her school and in the New York Public Library. Interesting conversation, but that's a different matter. He is this crazy philosopher, maybe the craziest philosopher alive today. So you just have to Google him on YouTube and see what I mean. If you listen to him for 1 minute, you'll know what I mean. Joke. All right, I'll take my time. I'm feeling this, rushed time. But before I tell you the joke, I want to tell you, I'll give an example of what kind of a thinker he is. Slavoj Žižek. This is in New York Public Library. I went to listen to one of his talks. And maybe he noticed me in the audience. Suddenly he went off on a tangent. He always does that, on tangent about Gandhi. So this is the way he thinks. There's a big audience sitting there, and he said, in this heavy Eastern European accent, and he says, Gandhi is the most violent man who ever lived. He is more destructive than Hitler. And I could see this lady who was sitting near me. She looked aghast, and she looked at me like this. And I went, because I know what he's like, so I went, wait. And then he explained. It is a pretty plausible explanation. He said, Adolf Hitler, was for all his violence and the Second World War and the millions of people killed and all of that, he did not change the structures of the world. They still remain the same. That's what nationalism and war and conquest, it's the same thing. But Gandhi, he challenged the mightiest empire on earth at that time not with violence, with non-violence. And it dismantled the entirety of the colonial infrastructure, the colonial structure across the world. It caved in after him. So he was more violent. Anyway, that's how he thinks. Okay, why am I telling you this? He has this joke he shared about the problem that physics has run into in investigating matter. Remember where we are. I haven't forgotten. 7 stages of reducing the universe into consciousness. And we are in the stage 3, Maya. He says, why is physics in trouble today? He says it's because God underestimated our intelligence. It's a joke. What does he mean? He said that, these video games, those of you who belong to the generation who has played video games, you know that when you are exploring an environment in a video game, there are parts of the environment you are not supposed to go. They're not part of the game. So there might be a house, and you try to open the door, nothing happens. There's a door, but it doesn't open. There might be a forest. You're walking towards it, but then when you reach the tree line, you can't enter the forest. Why? Because nothing has been programmed there. It's not part of the game. So you are supposed to remain within this. Now God, when he was programming this entire universe, he thought, these guys, they will never get past protons and neutrons and, electrons. Quarks, at the most quarks. Okay, I'll program it till then. After that, no need to do anything. They'll never get to this anyway. They are not intelligent enough. But we did. And as we're trying to push beyond, we find inconsistencies, paradoxes, problems, chaos. So that's just his joke. But what I'm pointing towards is Maya. That there is a paradox at the heart of physical existence of this universe. Multiple paradoxes. When you push any subject, any line of inquiry to its deepest possible extent, you reach Maya. But according to Vedanta, and I'm moving faster now, according to Vedanta, Maya does not exist by itself. It is the power of Brahman, of consciousness, of being, of the ultimate reality. It's like fire has the power of light and heat. So light and heat don't hang in space by themselves. It's the fire which is radiating that light and heat. Similarly, it is Brahman, consciousness itself, whose power is Maya. So Maya, fourth stage, Maya is reduced to, he says, Chit Vilasa, the play of consciousness. It is this play of consciousness you are seeing as this world, through Maya, in 5 elements, in this entire constructed universe. It's the play of consciousness. We are still in the 4th stage. There's a long way to go before I come to what I'm going to talk about. The 4th stage is Chit Vilasa, the play of consciousness. Here you find the entirety of the magnificent philosophy of Kashmiri Shaivism. The universe is the play of Shiva. Who's Shiva? You are. How's that? And here I love this story by Alan Watts. Alan Watts, he was upstate here in California in the 60s and 70s. So here's this story. Here's this little book. It's called The Book. The taboo against knowing what you are. So here's this little story. God, it's a story for kids, but it's so profound. God was, existed from eternity to eternity, and God was lonely, bored. God wanted to play, but didn't have anybody to play with because there was only God. But because God was God, God thought about it, and God is extremely clever. So God thought about it and hit upon a solution. What's the solution? I need somebody to play with. So God pretended to be not God. Now there are 2. God and God pretending to be not God. Now God can play. But God, because He's God, He's not only very clever, He's also extremely good at what He does. So when He pretends to be not God, He completely forgot that He was God. And then got into all kinds of trouble and mischief. And now miserable, looking for a way out of his troubles. That is God, pretending to be not God, in a world of trouble of his own making. That thou art. That's what you are. You are God. You are Shiva. In Kashmiri Shaivism, they say, when we say in Vedanta there is ignorance and you realize the truth beyond ignorance, they say, what ignorance? Nothing can cover up Shiva's real nature except Shiva himself. You are Shiva, pretending to be this miserable little human being, afraid of death and so on and so forth. So, no, I want to be enlightened. You are Shiva, pretending to be this spiritual seeker. The moment you decide to be enlightened, this I want to be enlightened right now. You say you want to be. That's what you're playing at now. The moment you really decide, Shiva decides to be enlightened, nothing can stop Shiva. That moment you will be enlightened. It's very nice to think about. That there's really no problem here. But that's just the fourth stage in our journey. Question is asked by the non-dualist here. Can consciousness play? To play, to change, you need movement and activity. And all activity, change is revealed by consciousness. There can be no activity or change in consciousness. So are you stipulating that? There's very good logic for that. I will not spend time on that. Consciousness is the witness of all change, is the illuminer of all change. Consciousness itself does not change. So the play is witnessed by consciousness, illumined by consciousness, is an appearance of consciousness. It's not that consciousness is actually going out and having a good game out there. No, it's like Swami Vivekananda put it this way, one only exists, in him is Maya dreaming this dream. It's not like play, it's more like a dream. That's what the non-dualist says. So you move from Chid Vilasa in Sanskrit, the play of consciousness, to Chid Vivarta. This word Vivarta, it means apparent transformation. It means appearance. What's the difference? Rope appears as snake without actually becoming a snake. The sky appears to be blue without actually becoming blue. It's colorless. It doesn't become blue. It appears blue. It looks blue. Consciousness is not actually playing. It appears as this universe. So this is the difference. The movement from Chid Vilasa, play of consciousness, to an appearance of consciousness. At this point, only the non-dualist is there. Others part company with him, because this makes the universe an appearance. The realist will not accept this. Even the play of Shiva makes for a real universe. But an appearance, when you say it's an appearance of consciousness, in consciousness, to consciousness, it makes material universe of a lesser order of reality than consciousness itself. So the dualists and the realists, they part company with the non-dualist at this point. That's why the non-dualists alone will use examples like rope snake, mirage in the desert, mirage water, or dream. Chid Vivarta, still not enough. The sixth stage, whatever appears, sky and ocean and temple and people, if there are appearances in consciousness, then every bit of the appearance must be that which appears. I'll repeat. Every bit of an appearance must be that which is appearing. Every bit of the illusory snake must be nothing but the rope. Everything that you experience in your dream, it's nothing but the dreamer's mind. Are you with me here? Everything that appears on the movie screen is nothing but the screen. The screen itself is appearing in those ways. Whatever you touch there will be the screen itself. It is an appearance of consciousness. Every bit of it is pervaded by consciousness. This is called Chinmaya. The entirety of appearance pervaded by consciousness. One last step to non-duality, to what we are talking about. Everything pervaded by consciousness. But what do you mean pervaded by consciousness? Is it like this temple and you light incense and the incense pervades the entire hall? Is consciousness like a box in which, or is the world, universe like a box in which consciousness pervades it like incense? Or is it like a dark room, switch on the light and the light pervades the room? Is it like that? Or is it like wave and water? Because every bit of the wave is water. Is it like gold and ornament? Every bit of the ornament is gold. Is it like a clay pot? Every bit of the pot is clay. There's nothing but clay there. There's nothing but water there. There's nothing but gold there. In your dreams, there's nothing but the dreamer's mind. In this universe, there is nothing but consciousness. Chinmatram. Consciousness only. You are awareness. You are this shining being awareness. Shining being means being awareness. And whatever you are experiencing is nothing but that being awareness. Chin matram, consciousness only. Let me run through the 7 stages and see how we came here. World as it is, Sanskrit, Jagat, stage 1. Reduce it, see that it is entirely matter and energy and time and space. 5 elements, the play of 5 elements, Panchabhuta Vilasa. But the 5 elements, if you investigate them, you will end up with paradox, inconsistency, incompleteness, Maya. But Maya doesn't exist by itself. It is the power of consciousness. Chid Vilasa, the play of consciousness, like Shiva, pretending not to be Shiva, God pretending not to be God, and this universe comes into being. The play of consciousness. 4th. 5th, Chid Vivarta, an appearance in consciousness. Not playing, not actually doing stuff. It's a movie. It's a dream of consciousness. One alone exists. In him is Maya dreaming this dream. Chid Vivarta. It's a very profound philosophical move. Vivartavada. The theory of apparent transformation, not real transformation. But that apparent transformation is pervaded by consciousness. Chinmaya, pervaded by consciousness. But what does pervasion by consciousness mean? Chinmatra, consciousness alone. Remember what we are talking about. We are talking about this universe. The universe of seeing and smelling and tasting and hearing. This universe of desiring and laughing. And I am reminded of that story of, profound story of the washerman who found a diamond. And imagine, this is the washerman in India. There's still such washermen there. They will take you, they'll go around, collect your clothes and take it to the riverbed. And then you shouldn't see what they do with your clothes. They pound it and they scrub it, and but they make it clean. And they have stones for scrubbing. So this washerman got a stone for scrubbing a diamond. He didn't know what a diamond was. So this is a peculiar stone. And he used it for scrubbing dirty clothes. One day he went and asked his friend, the vegetable seller, what do you think this is? It's not like my other stones. This one is not like the others. It's not like my other stones. And the vegetable seller was a little more educated. He said, it's interesting. I'll give you 10 pounds of eggplant for it. Luckily, he didn't sell it. Finally he went to, more and more educated people. He went to this diamond merchant who said, this is the most magnificent diamond I've seen. I'll give you 1,000,000 rupees for it. And so all the needs of the washerman were met because of the diamond which he had all along, and he was using it for scrubbing clothes. Exactly like that. We, the being consciousness, right now, we are that. And it's not very difficult to discern it, to feel it also. We are this infinite being, beyond death, beyond birth, already. This is the oneness with God which mystics speak about. This is our real self. You are that, and that is you, already. But we don't know what it is. And we are using it for what? We're using it for seeing, hearing, smelling, for fighting, for being unhappy, for pursuing desires, for thinking I'm getting old, I'm going to die, I'm so unhappy. All of that requires existence and awareness. And that existence awareness you are, which never gets unhappy, which never gets old, never dies. This is what you are. All beings in that self, in that existence consciousness. Sarvabhutastam chatmanam. Sarvabhutani chatmani. All beings in the self in all beings. All beings in you, you in all beings. In this sense of undivided, unimpeded, unrestricted existence consciousness. Then what happens? This limited I and mine drops off. The life will still continue. After this realization, you still find that there's a body, there's a mind, there's a personality. You are free of the personality. You see, this is an interesting thing. The person which you are, the person which we are, that person will never be free. It's a body, mind, a construct, an appearance. But you will be free of the person. Then that person continues. You continue doing what you are doing. But you also see your infinite dimension free of the limitations of this life. So as long as that body-mind lives, it is called a Jivan Mukta, an enlightened, a free while living. Life will continue, but you live free. Nirmamo nirahankara. Nirahankara, not ego. Free of ego. What does it mean, free of ego? Will the ego not be there? It will be there, but it will perform what it's supposed to do. A coordinating function in this body and mind. The sense of I. The enlightened one knows, I am not I. That sounds contradictory. Shankaracharya sings, Mano buddhya hankara chittani naham. I am not the mind, I am not the intellect, I am not the memory. And then, ahankara na aham. I am not I. How contradictory is that? But what it means is, I am the witness of the ego. I am not the ego. That's a clue to it. To find, how do I find this thing you're talking about? This magnificent thing you're talking about? Look inside into the feeling of I. Am I aware of the I, the ego, the vertical I? Am I aware of that? Yes. What is that which is aware of the I? That is that unrestricted, unlimited existence consciousness. The witness of the ego. Nirahankara, nirmama. There is no sense of ownership, not only of possessions, of the even of the body. It's an appearance. If it's mine, then everything is mine. And if it's not mine, then nothing is mine. The problem starts when this much is mine, and that is yours, and I'll try some way of getting that to my account later on. That's when the problem starts. From the enlightened person's perspective, the entire universe is mine. Mine in the sense, I am it. Or none of it. Swami Virajananda ji, who was the president of our order, he has said something amazing. He says, the entirety of this experience of the universe is presented in all its entirety at once. Universe, body, mind, personality, it's all presented to me, the awareness, at once. Either I am all of it or none of it. What we do is, we do I and mine. We slice off a portion of it. This is I. And the rest, not I. Friend, not friend. Indifferent. Want, don't want. And then samsara starts. Nirahankara, Vijnaya, realizing this. How do you realize? The entirety of spiritual path is there. The way of realizing it. That is a separate topic. How do you do it? Vijnaya, realizing this. Sukhi bhava. Be happy. I think that's the best blessing that one can have. Be happy. Alright. We have just now run out of time. So I'm going to end with a peace chant. And then we go out for, and then after that there will be Q&A. Is there going to be a song now? Yes. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ram Krishna Arpanamastu.
From the one has come the many, in the many shines the one. Of all the forms there are not any that have not come from the one. Smaller than the smallest, greater than the greatest, the light beyond all darkness, the love within our hearts. In the stillness of the mountains, in vast skies of brilliant blues, in ancient worlds and modern cities, that wondrous light of light shines through. Brighter than the brightest, higher than the highest, deeper than the deepest, the love within our hearts. Across this world are many people, so many creatures great and small. We are all children of the Mother, she's the one who made us all. Beauty of all beauty, yet beyond both time and space, still dwelling in each moment, bestowing on us her grace. From the one has come the many, in the many shines the one. Of all the forms there are not any that have not come from the one. Smaller than the smallest, greater than the greatest, the light beyond all darkness, the love within our hearts, the light beyond all darkness, the love within our hearts.
Thank you. I couldn't have said it better. I think it sounds better also than the talk. It's exactly what I wanted to say. So how do we do this? Should we do the Q&A now, or do the Q&A now? All right. You can just raise your hands and tell us your name and ask the question. I can repeat the question back so that people make it short. Yes. Tell us your name.
Oh, I'm Jackson.
Jackson, yes.
Great talking. We all have kind of the problem of like in everyday life, say you do good at your job or like you get a house, the ego kind of starts creeping in. Like, I did good at my job. I have this house. Or even for you, like I gave a good talk. People are like, yeah, it's like, how do you?
Don't worry about it. The question was that in our day-to-day life, I think it's a good idea to repeat the question back. The question was, in our day-to-day life, you get a job, you have to get a house, you have to do work in life, and it says, good job, well done, I'm popular, people like me, or the reverse, people don't like me, I'm miserable. How do you stop the ego from doing that? Obviously, what we are talking about here is one unlimited existence consciousness, which is not this kind of a limited ego. So how do you stop the ego from doing that? Don't. You see, what you have to do in this path is focus all your energy, your focus on realizing the witness of the ego, that I am that. Not try to fiddle around with the ego and make it a better ego. I am an awful person, I have to become a saint. Good, it's a good project and a necessary project. On the path of enlightenment, you have to become, if not a saint, saint-like. And that's good, and I'm serious about it. But what we are talking about today, it says is, that reality is exactly the same in the saint and in the non-saint. It's exactly the same when you began the path, when you're proceeding in the path, and when you end the path. It is the same reality. It was not clear earlier. It was not effective earlier. For me, the problem was at my end as the seeker. When I realized that, I realized it was always all right. So, it is much easier to handle life from that perspective than to, try to tackle every problem as it comes and continue that inquiry. Yeah, the frameworks of spiritual practice are very well known. It is important to have discipline. It is important to have, honesty, integrity. It's important to have selflessness. These are qualities which we are going to practice, and these help us in spiritual life. Without these, it's very difficult to make any progress. Plus, we have a series of other practices. like meditation, like a mantra practice. All of these practices are there. And they give us a framework, a foundation. But what we are talking about here is deeper than all of this. So it's a complete change in what I refers to. All right, let's look at it this way. A word refers to something. When I say cloth, it refers to this thing. When I say I, it almost immediately, instinctively refers to what? This. What is this? It's a body and it's a mind. It's a living body and a mind, a person in there. That's what it normally refers to. What we are trying to do here is to see that even this is an object, an appearance to awareness in awareness. I am that which is the witness, unaffected witness of this I. From that perspective, when something is happening in the world, I get a job. Good, it worked out well for me. This person gets a job and does what this person is supposed to be doing. Well and good. This person is not doing well, is reacting badly to the world. Bring in the light of that knowledge and the behavior of this person will be modified accordingly. It's much easier to handle life from that ultimate perspective. Do you see the difference? What you are suggesting is, first let me become a saint, then I'll become enlightened. That's the usual idea of a progressive way of step by step by step. Finally, I am this saintly person, and then the last step will be I realize I am everything. Very good. But what the Advaitic path is saying is that start there. What do they say in Buddhism? The result is the path. Take your results as the path. The result of all beings are in me. I am in all beings. Why will you not take it as the path? Because you see, the claim is that it's already a fact right now. It's a fact right now. We're not seeing it. Make an effort to see. How do you make an effort to see? Listen, reflect, reason it out, and then begin to see it. It's not very difficult. It's not very difficult to come to an understanding in this path. Once you come to an understanding is not enough. But once you come to an understanding, you stay with the understanding. If I've understood something to be the truth, why not stay with it? It's the truth after all. And then let's see how it seeps into the person. Ultimate perspective and the person. In Advaita Vedanta, they say when you say I, what does it refer to? As I said, cloth, it refers to this. Say I, what does it refer to? It has three meanings. One meaning for us in ignorance, and two meanings for the enlightened one. The I, what are we talking about? I, when I say I, we mentioned the ego. The I means the ego which is connected to body and mind, just this person, for those of us who are in ignorance. But once you get enlightenment, once you make the breakthrough, then the I will have two different meanings for you. What are those two different meanings for the enlightened one? One is, I refers to that infinite shining existence. Satchit. It's an obvious fact. Who are you truly? The enlightened one may not tell us, but within himself or herself, whatever it is, within oneself, we will know for sure, I am that unlimited existence consciousness. That's one meaning of I for the enlightened one. The second meaning of I for the enlightened one is interesting. It's a pretend I. Refers to the body and mind. And they use it for interacting with us. They know that's not the final I. That's just the I which is used for transactions in the world. That's why you'd look out for the slips such enlightened people make. Sometimes they refer to it as this. Sri Ramakrishna would often refer to body mind as this thing, this place. He would say this place, this thing. And often he would say, I want a glass of water. I want to go to Calcutta. So he is using I in the second sense. The first sense is the common one in which we all use. It's the ego you're talking about. So you make that shift, then the ego becomes much easier to handle. Much easier. So Ramakrishna says, even after enlightenment, the sense of ego will come back. And why should it not? So we are often misled by language. When there's no ego, then only you're enlightened. When the ego dies, then you reach enlightenment. We feel that the ego somehow disappears or something. No, no, no. I'll tell you what actually it's in Advaita Vedanta, what is meant by that. You transcend the ego. You realize I am not the I. That's the death of the ego. But it still remains as an instrument. If the body appears, does the body appear to the enlightened person? Of course it does. Knowledge, enlightenment, doesn't destroy anything in the physical world. It just removes ignorance and we see things as they are. So does the body appear to the vision of the enlightened one? Yes, it does. If the body appears, does the mind appear to the enlightened one with its memories and knowledge and everything? Yes, it does. Then why wouldn't the ego appear also? The ego also will appear, but clearly I am not that ego. That will be very clear for the enlightened one. Right. It's a good question. Yes, Tiari.
My name is Tiari. My question was, why is there appearance? So if it's Chit-Vilasa, the story you said about God being lonely, that makes sense, that God was lonely and so he created everything and then forgot himself, and so that's the cause. But when we come to Chit-Vilasa and say all this appearance is a dream, why is it?
Okay. Right. I love this question because it's the deepest philosophical objection to what I am saying. And I was ready for a difficult one. She is studying philosophy at NYU, so I'm sure she is going to come up with something difficult. So her objection is, Diari's objection is that play of consciousness one sort of understands. If consciousness is playing and so this is the play of consciousness, one can sort of understand a reason for all of this. Why? What's the reason? Play. But why is consciousness appearing? Very deliberately it seems. There's a lot of story going on here. So consciousness is appearing as this. Why would consciousness appear as this? Or why would it appear as anything at all? All right. I'll take that question. Why does consciousness appear as anything at all? I'll give you a few answers. The sort of final answers. In Advaita Vedanta, traditional Advaita Vedanta, when you ask this question, you will be given the stock answer. Because of Maya. But then one can always ask, why Maya? Right? So I'll give you the answers. Why Maya? Because of Maya, the consciousness is appearing this way. But why Maya at all? If consciousness is the only thing that exists. The answer to that question is that the question is wrong. Not that I think the question is unintelligent. It's a very intelligent question. But the question is wrong for this purpose. I mean, Swami Vivekananda said that the question is wrong. And he left it at that. It seemed obvious to him probably why the question is wrong. But I had to work it out. It took me a long time to understand why is this question wrong. What is the question? Why Maya? What was her question? Why is appearance, consciousness appearing? Answer, Maya. Why Maya? Question is wrong. Why is the question wrong? You have a little 5-year-old boy, Why? Why is the question wrong? Because of this. When you ask a question, what is it that you're asking? You are asking for a cause. Why is it wet? Because it rained. You are asking for a cause. The answer should be because. Because something. Something that will satisfy you. But now look at what you are asking. You are asking about Maya. What is Maya? Maya is time, space, causation. You see where I'm leading with this. If causation is a constituent of Maya, you cannot ask why prior to causation. You cannot ask why about causation. It's like this. Time, space and causation. It's like asking what is outside space. You see immediately what's wrong with the question. You say outside space, outside, inside, you've already accepted space. If you say outside space, you already accepted there's something called space and then inside and outside. It's like asking what was there before time. But before and after are time words. You already accepted time. Then you're asking this question. Why is a causation word. You're asking about a cause. Cause of appearance. Cause of Maya. But causation itself is not Maya. Before causation, outside causation, beyond causation, you cannot ask why. You are asking what is the cause of causation. But then you've already accepted causation. If you accepted causation, you've accepted Maya. If you accepted Maya, then you are accepted that because of Maya, consciousness appears. Now you say that's a little peculiar. Think about it. It's actually a good answer. Why this question cannot be answered, it's not a right question to ask. But let's look at it some other way. Let me give a couple of other answers which have appealed to me. One answer was given by a monk in the Himalayas. In Hindi, I'll translate for you. What is the nature of consciousness? To illumine. To reveal. The very nature of awareness is to be aware of. There is nothing to be aware of. This is consciousness alone. But consciousness will be aware of something. And the example he gave is very nice. He says, the little boy looks up at the dome of the sky and he sees an inverted, like a saucer or an inverted pan. Like a blue pan, it's like a surface. It's not a surface. It's endless space. But the eye is designed to see something. So he sees a thing like that, inverted surface of a blue sky. Consciousness is there to be aware of something. There's nothing to be aware of. So it becomes aware of itself. Itself cannot be an object. Consciousness is not an object. That's fundamental in the Advaita Vedanta. Yet, consciousness sees itself as an object. That's an error. It sees the subject as an object. It sees the unlimited as the limited. It sees that which is all-pervasive as spread out in space. It sees that which is eternal as limited in time. It sees that which is fulfillment, meaning and bliss as struggle and strife and suffering. It is consciousness seeing itself, but imperfectly. Swami Vivekananda put it that way. What is this universe? He said, it is the wreckage of the infinite on the shores of space, time and causation. Shores of space, time and causation? Maya. Aren't you saying that there is a second thing apart from consciousness called Maya and space and time and causation? And Swami Vivekananda says, they are less than nothing. Even the things in the world, they seem to be substantial. Time and space and causation are less than nothing without the things themselves. Yeah. They are just the stuff of illusion. They do not exist. They do not exist without entities which exist. So, time depends on change. Space depends on objects which are extended in space. And causation depends on change and space. That's another answer. And there's another answer which I like, because I came up with it. It's very simple. It's childishly simple. Your question is, why does consciousness appear as this universe? What is the alternative? Dhyari could say that it could not appear, there could be nothing. Right? Existence. Why is it appearing as existing entities? Consciousness. Why is it appearing as a universe to be conscious of? The alternative could be nothing. There could be nothing instead of something. That could be an alternative. You're asking, why is there something? Why is something appearing? The answer is, it could be that there's nothing. But don't you see, that's exactly what's going on here. Every day, in your waking and dreaming, there is something to be aware of. And in deep sleep, there is nothing to be aware of. In the cosmos, in the Hindu cycle of existence, in infinite existence, there are cycles of projection, existence, and disappearance. Srishti, Sthiti, Pralaya. There is something to be aware of. And there will be also, a time will come, there will be nothing to be aware of. When the entire universe is called Pralaya, Mahapralaya, the great dissolution. And again there will be something to be aware of. This is what consciousness can do. It can be aware of something, or it can still be aware of nothing. These are the only two logical alternatives. And that's what poor consciousness, if you ask, why are you appearing as something? I'm also appearing as nothing. Take your pick. What else can I do? It's either something or nothing. Final answer. So one of the Swamis, I forget who it was, in California itself, either Prabhavanandaji or Asheshanji, somebody said this. His answer was that on this side of enlightenment, we have this question. There's no answer to it. On that side of enlightenment, those who are enlightened, they have the answer, but they don't have a question. Do we have a question there? Yes. Annie.
You were talking about Kashmir Shaivism and Lord Shiva. So, do I understand this right? In Kashmir Shaivism, which is the book of Vedanta, they believe that it's all real. I mean, it's all
Yes.
the same. What we see is real, plus realization. So that this exists, and that strikes me as being much more accessible than none of this exists. I don't see you, I'm not here.
Right.
You know, that.
Right.
So there's the part of me that says, gee, I wonder why all the schools that are going to Vedanta don't embrace that, seeing it's certainly more accessible than for kind of meat and potato Westerners.
Right.
Anyway.
I see the question, and I, in fact, studying Kashmiri Shaivism with a noted scholar, a professor of Kashmiri Shaivism, and he would definitely say that, so you are playing down Kashmiri Shaivism from a Vedantic perspective, the Shankaracharya, and you kept Kashmiri, look at that, you've just kept Kashmiri Shaivism as a fourth stage, and Advaita as, fifth, sixth, and seventh stage. So we're trying to show the superiority of Advaita over Kashmiri Shaivism. You're right. The pleasant advantages of Kashmiri Shaivism is it's the play of Shiva, and the play is real. So if the objects are real, the differences are real, and yet at a fundamental level, it's all one reality, and that one reality is Shiva. And this sounds fine. It sounds fine. Notice something. Advaita Vedanta, in fact, has non-dual. The delight in Kashmiri Shaivism, they find it fun. It's fun, it's nice to study, and Kashmiri Shaivism has the particular advantage of extensive methods of practice. With a sense of, okay, what do I do now? You are that, fine, but now what do I do? But you are that. Oh, how do I realize it? We just always told ad nauseum, hear it, think about it, meditate upon it. But Kashmiri Shaivism will give you 112 methods of meditation. Wonderful techniques. Each of them directly taking you to that truth that you are Shiva. So that's the beauty of Kashmiri Shaivism. It's all real. It's the play of Shiva, which is fun in itself. And you are Shiva, so you are not really in trouble at some fundamental level, even when things seem very dark indeed. Assert that reality, you will be free. And the methods of asserting it, extensive methods. But I am an Advaitin. So I'll have to say, notice a fault line. Advaita is delight in Kashmiri Shaivism. From an Advaitic perspective, everything that Kashmiri Shaivism says is acceptable. It's fun. Kashmiri Shaiva philosophers are critical of Advaita Vedanta. They have to be, in order to establish Kashmiri Shaiva philosophy. What's the fault line? Fault line is, how can it be equally real? Difference is real, non-difference is real. How can they both be equally real at the same time? You and I and all of this is real. We are all different people. There is a world which is characterized by difference. And there is high and low and rich and poor and sick and healthy and happy and sad. And all of these are real things. And no, these are not real things. This is one undifferentiated differentiated mass of consciousness, Shiva. What Advaita Vedanta does is, it puts the first at a lower level of reality. It's an appearance. It's a dream. It's an illusion. And that undifferentiated mass of consciousness ever fulfilled is you. That's the reality. If you put them together, it doesn't make sense logically. Is multiplicity real? Say yes. And is oneness real? Yes. Logically doesn't make sense. And there is a deep problem with it. If you hold on to the reality of this universe, it's like holding on to the reality of the waves. There's a great chance that you won't see the underlying water. If you're immersed in the play of the waves, it will not strike you. But once you see the water underlying all the waves, the water is the reality, then you can enjoy the play of the waves. Does the movie have to stop because you have seen the screen, that you realize it's just a screen, it's a movie? Do you have to stop all the movies? No, let the movies play. It makes more fun. But if you take the movie to be real, then it becomes a nightmare. A tragedy is a tragedy, and it's horrible. But a tragedy is art only if it's a movie. Then it's art. But if it's real and you're in the midst of it, and it's your tragedy, how do you say that, how can you say that there is an underlying reality which is greater than this, or the same as this? Is if the tragedy is real in itself, and Shiva is real in Shiva, if they're coexistent realities, Shiva can't help you. From the Shiva perspective, this is an appearance. Then it works. But Kashmiri Shaivism will not permit that. What I'm saying is, what I do, I take an Advaitic perspective, an Advaitic philosophical perspective. That enables me to enjoy and practice and delight in every kind of practice. The self in all and all in the self. You want to be, why Kashmiri Shaiva? You can be a dualist, you can worship as Hindu, Christian, Muslim, you can be atheist about the existence of God also. From that perspective, it's fine. But from a dualistic perspective, you can't be a non-dualist. It's not acceptable. That's why you see all dualist philosophies, dualist schools of Vedanta, they fiercely attack non-dualism because for their very existence, for their bread and butter, that has to be false. You deal in duality, you deal in difference, then the philosophy of non-difference is lethal for you. But a philosophy of non-difference, from that perspective, an appearance of difference is completely acceptable and indeed enjoyable. It's fun. Non-dualist can have fun with Kashmiri Shaivism. Kashmiri Shaivism will have to be very careful about Advaita Vedanta. I talked to one of the leading scholars of Kashmiri Shaivism, and a conversation is online. And his answer was, why do you have to think of consciousness in these very gross physical terms? Consciousness can have an actual play as this world and still be undifferentiated reality. That's the extraordinary nature, they call it, the extraordinariness of the Shiva nature. That may well be true. But then you have moved beyond the range of reason and philosophy. If you're going to talk about extraordinariness, that's called magical thinking. Then why not start with God, heaven, and all of that? And it's entirely possible. Why not? If you're going to be consistently logical, ruthlessly logical, sort of monomaniacally logical, then non-dualism is inescapable. Advaita is inescapable, in my view. And in my defense, I will say, notice the extensive Kashmiri Shaiva literature. Their dialectics against the Madhyamaka Buddhists. In Kashmir is a place where there's a lot of philosophy going on, a lot of philosophy in the 8th, 9th, 10th centuries, 11th centuries. Their dialectics against the Pramana school of Buddhism. Their arguments against non-dual Vedanta. How interesting. In general, neither from the Buddhist perspective and certainly an Advaitic perspective, nobody ever took them seriously. Where are the counterattacks against them? Nobody bothered. Okay, that's my take on this. That's the last question and we'll stop here. We can take it afterwards outside. Yes. Uma Vidya, yes.
In your talk, you emphasize the nature of reality as existence, consciousness, and use those words interchangeably.
Yes.
And you noticeably, in my mind, have left out bliss.
Mm.
And
yes.
In your answers just now, you've been talking about play, delight, and we were talking about appearances. And so, often in my heart and from experiential
experientially point of view, the bliss part is the display, is the appearances. We can take it in a way that we create suffering for ourselves, but we can also take it as art and find great joy
Yes.
and beauty. And so I just wondered if you would express a little bit more about the bliss aspect. And then also what kept coming in my mind was how you were going back and forth between existence and consciousness.
Yes.
They were seen as exactly the same.
Yes. All right. So Uma Vidya, she's got these two questions. One is, I noticed how you're going back and forth between existence, consciousness, treating them as the same thing. So I'd like to comment on that. Yes. And then I noticeably left out the bliss aspect of it. And I mentioned it a little bit. And it seems to be so much more evident in, for example, the Kashmira Shaiva perspective. It's the play of consciousness. So there's the delight and the bliss in it. Isn't this entire display, this entire presentation of the universe, isn't this the bliss aspect of consciousness? So these are the questions that you have asked. Existence and consciousness are the same thing. This is not intuitively apparent. They seem to be different. How do they seem to be different? We seem to feel, I am aware, and there are lots of things which exist, and they're not necessarily aware. That's what we feel. There's lots of things here. I think the people are aware unless they are zombies, but I don't think the chairs and tables and the carpet or the space itself is aware. I don't think so. I don't feel it. I feel I am aware. I exist and I'm aware. And these things exist, and probably most of them are not aware. Therefore, we feel that there is a possibility of existence without awareness. Of course, awareness and existence must go together, because otherwise awareness will become a non-existent awareness. Logically, any awareness must be an existing awareness. Existence and awareness must go together. But can existence remain without awareness? Okay. One good way of understanding how existence and awareness are the same thing is dreams. Notice, everything in a dream is your mind only, the dreamer's mind only. Even things which seem to be non-conscious, non-mind, rocks and water and dust, we see in a dream, a path on. You feel that I am aware, the path is not aware. But when you wake up, what will happen? Oh, the path, and I was walking, all of this was a product of the mind, which is aware. It is the mind itself which becomes aware things and non-aware things. Existing without awareness, that also, it appears in the dream. Do you see how the dream example is very interesting as far as existence and awareness are concerned? Because every entity experienced in the dream is not apart from the dreaming mind. Everybody accepts that. Here, in Advaita Vedanta, the claim is, it is consciousness alone which is appearing as this entire universe. If it is appearing as this entire universe, even things which seem to be non-conscious objects, solid rocks out there, they're still appearing in consciousness, to consciousness. What is the relationship between that rock and consciousness? Typical relationship would be, it is outside my body, and I am seeing it through the mind and the body, and awareness reaches that rock through the mind and the senses. I sense a solid rock, non-conscious, non-aware, existing thing, quite apart from my consciousness. That's what we feel. And Advaita Vedanta says there's a whole analysis for this, which shows that it's impossible to possess anything which is not appearing to consciousness. This object which appears to consciousness and the consciousness, the relationship, I need not repeat it. Go through that 7-stage object, 5 elements, Maya, consciousness, appearance in consciousness, pervaded by consciousness, consciousness alone. That object which seems to be out there is actually consciousness. Seems to be non-conscious is nothing but consciousness. So that's why I speak of them as together. From an Advaitic perspective, don't think of it as two different things, existence and consciousness, or two different qualities of Brahman. Then it becomes the school of Vishishta Advaita Vedanta. A non-dual Vedanta does not take consciousness and existence as qualities of Brahman. Swami Vivekananda said, not that it is It exists. It is existence itself. Not that it knows. It is knowledge itself. Not that it is happy. It is happiness itself. What does he mean by existence itself? It's the Heideggerian sense of being, of consciousness itself. Not a conscious mind, thought or perception. It's that awareness which enables mind, thought and perception. Now, bliss. In Advaita Vedanta, it is the very unlimited nature of existence consciousness which is bliss. It may be experienced as bliss in the mind of an enlightened person. From an enlightened person's perspective, it can be an experiential bliss. But in itself, it is fulfillment. It is the unlimited, very unlimitedness of existence and consciousness. Look at Swami Vivekananda's language. The I has all become, and the all is I and bliss. It is that I has all become and the all is I, that itself is bliss. It is Sat and Chit, which itself is Ananda. The definition of Brahman is Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Unlimited existence consciousness. Existence hyphenated consciousness. It's a limitation of our language. It's that unlimited presence. Presence is a new word I've come across, but it's a beautiful thing. Presence has the meaning of two constituents. Presence, the sense of existence, and also the sense of an aware existence. It's presence. So it's a beautiful word. Unlimited presence, excluding nothing, in which everything appears and plays around and disappears. That unlimited presence, that itself is bliss. One of the Upanishads says, Yo vai bhuma tat sukham, nalpe sukham asti. That which is the vast, that which is the infinite, that is happiness. There is no happiness, there is no delight in the limited. The true happiness is the unlimited. So that is the Vedantic idea of happiness, of bliss, of fulfillment. Let's call it fulfillment, of unlimitedness. Of course, the Vaishnava schools of Vedanta, they take off from here and they say there are higher levels of bliss which come in devotion to a personal God. That's a different matter altogether. Good. We have had some very good questions. Thank you so much. And I think the internet audience who are watching today and those who will watch in the months and years ahead, they will be benefited by these questions. Thank you so much.